Ready? We're ready to go, right? All right. Thank you for joining us for our presentation tonight. My name is Jennifer Fleming, and I'm the president of the International Dyslexia Association, Tennessee branch. I was first introduced to the work of TNIDA when my child was diagnosed with dyslexia. I had no idea where to start. At that point, I had been teaching for about 12 years, and I didn't know anything about dyslexia other than your B's and D's are backwards, and that's all I knew. So I started to ask my more seasoned teacher friends, and they just said, read to her more, just keep reading to her. And I knew deep down there was something else. And I always tell parents, if you have that gut feeling, go with that gut feeling. So I started reading and studying and going to every workshop, conference, webinar, everything I could to find out more about dyslexia. And this is how I got to where I am today. It's been a tremendous year for Tennessee teachers and students in and out of the classroom. And tonight you're going to hear from expert educators and school leaders about the foundations of reading that should be present in every K through 2 classroom across the state. More than expert educators, the voices and faces you'll see on the screen will tell you time and time again, they are here for us tonight because the kids who will fill our classrooms in the next 2 weeks deserve to be surrounded by a support system that bridges school and home. For those who may only know a little about us, the International Dyslexia Association, a worldwide organization with the same mission, is to get strong, research-based literacy instruction in every classroom. There are branches in every state. Our Tennessee branch provides training and professional development opportunities for teachers. Each year, we put on a statewide conference in the spring to connect national speakers with Tennessee teachers and providers, as well as provide scholarships for teachers and practitioners to learn more about literacy and best practices. For those who may not know, the Tennessee General Assembly passed a legislation last year that set up the Tennessee Literacy Success Act, which TNIDA followed closely through all the iterations in the Assembly. The act ensures that all Tennessee children learn to read using a foundational literacy skills approach grounded in phonics. Across our state this summer, teachers are being trained in the science of reading and being given materials and coaching to help put into practice what we know to be best practice for struggling readers. Explicit, multisensory, research-based instruction that combines foundational skills and content knowledge. All kids, especially those with dyslexia and other language processing disorders, benefit greatly from instructional practices that are grounded in this. A quick note that our TNIDA board members span the length of the state from Tri-City to Memphis to Chattanooga. We are real people with real connections to dyslexia that are able to help in your community. Following tonight's presentation, we will share links and addresses for you on how to follow up with us in the future. We are confident that tonight is just the beginning of a really great conversation to move the needle for our kids. If at any point tonight you have a question or want more information about something you heard or saw, please make sure you put that in the chat box. We'll do our best to answer the questions at the end, but we also share contact information so that we can continue to discuss during the year. With that, I have the great honor of introducing tonight. Dr. Scott Langford, representing Sumner County Schools, will start us off. You will be hard-pressed to find another person as passionate about success of our kids than Dr. Langford. We'll also hear from Carissa Comer, a K-2 literacy coach from Putnam County Schools, and Dr. Yvette Stewart, Director of Elementary Learning at Hamilton County Schools, who will share insights about teaching and training preparation. These women set the bar high for our state's teachers and support them to use the science of reading in their instruction with fidelity. Also joining us is Robin McClellan from the Tennessee Department of Education, who has been a partner with us in the last year as we navigate the how of getting good resources in the hands of our teachers. Y'all, I cannot say how grateful we are to be in partnership with this group. Thanks again for joining us. Handing it over to you, Scott.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's so exciting to get to share the content for tonight. This is, as Jennifer already mentioned, this is one of the most exciting and most important things that we can discuss as school systems, as teachers, as principals, as people working for the state and for central offices around the country, but also to learn how to work together as parents with students with dyslexia, students who are struggling to read, and even students that aren't struggling to read. It's really the most important thing we can do. The most important thing we can do is ensure that our kids read fluently and confidently by the end of third grade. That's the number one predictor for high school. It's also just something for a lifelong skill to feel confident and comfortable in everything that they choose to do for the remainder of their life. The most important thing that we can do as a society is ensure that all of our kids are strong readers by the end of third grade. As Jennifer mentioned, my name is Scott Langford. I am the Chief Academic Officer in Sumner County Schools. And it really is an honor to be here tonight with you. Before I was Chief Academic Officer, I was a high school principal. I was a middle school assistant principal. I taught AP English Literature, English, Junior English. I taught AP US History, World Geography, and US History and Economics. So I've had the privilege of teaching a lot of subjects, all really that are tied directly to literacy, but on the back end of a child's school career. I'll be honest, when I moved into my current job, the first thing I realized that I needed to do was I had to learn how reading worked. How do kids learn how to read? As a junior and senior teacher, primarily in English, I was always perplexed at how many of my students that were 17, 18 years old struggled to read, were not confident in their reading, and struggled to comprehend what they read and then to communicate their ideas. It was a mystery to me. In fact, I was speaking to some high school teachers today, and I made the comment that when I first began going into kindergarten, first and second grade classrooms and watching teachers teach kids to read is like watching magic happen. It's just stunning to watch how good our teachers are at working with children and teaching them how to read. The flip side of that is the struggle, the very real struggle for teachers and for parents when children don't begin to learn to read or identify obstacles or come across obstacles. It's very frustrating. And I know that many of you have experienced this frustration. And it's why, I think one of the most exciting things that we can talk about tonight is the work that's being done in Tennessee as part of a national conversation about how to teach kids to read and how to work with kids who are struggling to grasp the concepts of reading. For me, it's personal. I was born with a learning disability, not dyslexia, but a learning disability. I have trouble processing. I was blessed that I was born into a teacher family. My mom and dad were both teachers. I had about 14 aunts and uncles that were teachers. I grew up in schools. I had people that read to me and talked to me from the very earliest of my life. My earliest memories are people reading to me, talking to me, asking me questions, and engaging me. I was very blessed, and I was able to compensate and overcome many of the learning disability obstacles that I faced. As a high school teacher, when I first began teaching in Atlanta in 1999, I had a kid, and I'll share this story briefly, but it's really one of the most powerful things that's happened to me in my teaching career. I had a young man named Grady. He was a freshman or sophomore when I had him, and we were doing a PADEA seminar. PADEA is an approach where you engage students to think deeply, to read a text, and to speak coherently about what they've read. The school that I taught at had about 82% of the freshmen that read below a second grade level, even though they were freshmen in high school. My mentor teacher looked at my assignment. We were reading Plato's Cave Myth, and she encouraged me not to use that with my class because it was way too challenging and the kids wouldn't understand and they wouldn't be able to engage the text. Fortunately, I was pushed hard to continue on with that text. And I will never forget as long as I live. I had to provide some assistance, some scaffolding, some help to Grady, but I will never forget the way his eyes lit up when he made sense of the cave myth. And if you ever read Plato, Plato's not easy. And Grady was reading that as a freshman in high school. I was only one small spark in his life, but Grady grew exponentially over the course of high school. He's a chef now in Atlanta, is very successful, has a family of his own, and it's been really exciting to play a very small part in his life. And that's what's at stake when we're talking about reading. It's not test scores, it's not achievement, it's not any of that. It's instilling in our children the ability to proficiently read so that they can be successful in whatever path they choose in life. And that's been my district's commitment. It's the commitment of the Tennessee Department of Education. But I know, speaking to a group of people who have been touched by dyslexia, who advocate for dyslexia, who work hard to make sure, right on the front lines, to make sure that all kids can read. I know that in the past, there have been a lot of frustrations because assistance to our children with dyslexia have always been long on promises and short on delivery. I'm excited to say tonight that the panel that we have here is outstanding early childhood educators that know how to teach reading, that know the ins and outs of foundational literacy and knowledge building curriculum, but also that the Tennessee Department of Education has made a significant and major investment and is deeply devoted to ensuring that all of our students can process and learn to read, and that includes our students with dyslexia. It's a very exciting time in reading instruction and for our parents. So we want to share some of those things tonight. So I want to move on pretty quickly through the remainder of my part to get to the real experts. We have Carissa and Yvette with us that will really take us deep into the content knowledge tonight. All right, and as I mentioned, I'm going to move pretty quickly through this, but I think it's important to know that oral language does not, when I started school, we thought that reading began in kindergarten or first grade. But oral language development begins at birth. Children are listening from the time they enter the earth. As soon as they're handed to their mom and dad, they start listening, they start hearing. By the time a child goes to school, they recognize verbally over 10,000 words, well before they can read. It's important for us then to speak to our children, to talk, to converse, to ask questions. And I think that's one of the things in how parents can support oral language development. It's really easy, and I don't think we stop and slow down and give enough credit to it. We talk a lot about reading. Jennifer mentioned earlier about the advice that she was giving when her daughter was struggling. It was all about read. And reading is important. It's so important for kids to be read to hear written language, to see the way the words flow from left to right. All those things, that's important, but it's not the only thing. Rich conversation is just as important. Conversation builds language foundations. If you talk with your kids and use adult language and narrate the world around you and ask them to narrate the world around, our kids are natural scientists. They love to play conversational games like I Spy. Pick a topic that your child is interested in and research it together. Those rich conversations and reading will work together to really help our kids build the oral language that will carry them through the early years of learning how to read. And I'm going to turn it over now to Carissa. I just want to point out, as you'll see through the rest of the presentation, there are two key components to learning how to read during elementary years. Half of the equation is foundational skills, and the other half is building knowledge. Knowing how to pronounce letters and sounds, but then also knowing how to, once you can read words, to know how to fit them into schema to understand knowledge. I'm going to turn it over now to Carissa, our expert on foundational skills.
Thank you so much, Scott. And as we heard that Scott was talking about the importance of oral language and reading to our children, now let's really talk about how we can ensure that our children are reading by third grade. And I know we have a lot of parents on the call that are already going to know most of this, but I just want to briefly just walk through it. So unlike learning to speak, learning to read, it doesn't come naturally to most children. Our human brains are not wired to learn the speech, but the printed word is a man-made invention. And we actually need to teach children these essentials. However, extensive research does show us that and shows us how children learn to read, and even how the brain learns to process that written language. So this evening, we're going to talk through two of the essentials of learning to read. The first, parents know, they know how to teach their children letters, but knowing your letters, that's not enough to know how to really break apart words. For example, I can know the letter C makes the k sound, and I know the letter H makes the sound, but combining it makes the ch sound. So when we talk about the sounds first instruction for students, what we mean is we're teaching kids the different sounds in the language and which letter combinations make those sounds so they can have the tools to break down any word and all new words. Research tells us that students need to learn sounds first. And the first thing that I want you to know as parents is that Tennessee has been training our teachers so they will know this essential information. And this slide here shows you a glimpse of what's going on in Tennessee. All summer long, our teachers have been in training. And I was so honored to be one of the facilitators. And it was so, as a facilitator and a teacher, I learned so much. And the training covered the importance of using our high quality instruction materials like the Tennessee Foundational Skills Curriculum Supplement that follows the science of reading in that research based. It has been an amazing learning experience, and the power of having such that partnership in alignment between our state leaders and our teachers is going to have such an impact on our students' reading success. And I really want you to look at the slide, the Christie, where Bedford County teachers, they said her favorite quote today was, "Everything makes so much more sense to me now." Yes. How exciting is that for teachers? So now, Tennessee has also created some free foundational skills that I would love for my colleague, Dr. Robin McClellan, to speak about. I affectionately call her Dr. Robin, but she is a true literacy champion for all kids. She works shoulder to shoulder with our leaders and our teachers, champion for all kids to receive and get reading success. I will now turn it over to Dr. Robin.
I don't think I can top a message from the two dynamos you've just heard from, but basically I just wanted to say that Tennessee is really moving forward, and now we know exactly what we need, what tools we have are now in place, and now we're working on implementation and partnerships like this partnership with the Tennessee branch of the International Dyslexia Association, the different community organizations we've been partnering with. We want to get the message out to Tennessee that our teachers have the right tools and they're so dedicated and driven to level the playing field for all of our children and equip them with what they need to be readers. So the summer reading training has really been a pivotal moment. And Director Hassel in Haywood County says, I feel like we're finally going to move the needle because all of our teachers are rowing in the right direction. And he talks a lot about equity. So we want to make sure that all children have the opportunity to have big lives and to be equipped as readers. The Foundational Skills Curriculum Supplement is a resource developed before my time with the state, but part of the big vision of giving teachers what they need. And so it is explicit foundational skills instruction, teaching children the code, how to break the code so that they can build their strength in understanding the written code to become strong readers.
Thank you so much, Robin. Now I want us to take a look at what's happening in our Tennessee classrooms, where we are using the Tennessee Foundational Skills Curriculum Supplement or high quality instructional materials that incorporates that systematic, explicit, systematic phonics every single day. Kids study the sounds, it's sounds first, and then they talk about the sounds. So they say it, or they hear it, they say it, and it's just repeated over and over again. And some ways that they do is they look at how the sounds formed in the mouth. you know, the placement, the voicing, the manner. We use mirrors, we look at each other. There's so much going into that sound. The teachers are modeling the sounds, and then the kids mirror them. So they are hearing it and saying it, hearing it and saying it. And then we break them down into syllables. The kids may talk about what sounds are in the classroom. But that's what the sounds first looks like. Then as the kids have learned those new sounds, we have multiple practices with using those sounds and their spellings. The class as a group and individually, right here on the screen is what you see as a spelling tree, and it is a type of graphic organizer, one of the many graphic organizers we use to sort our spellings. You can see how many ways you can have the spellings for the k sound. So they have all the tools and the keys and the resources in our rooms to practice hearing, saying, reading, spelling, and writing all of these sounds that we are learning. Then students go into practicing reading multiple ways. We group read, we partner read, but they practice with decodable readers. And these decodable readers are very, very special books written with words that features this set of sounds. And you can see in this where they are really working on the AR and the ER because it's bolded. And they practice it, and then that's a scaffold that's taken away. But all decodable readers are 100% readable for our kids because they have been explicitly and systematically taught the sounds and the spellings to this. These books, a lot of people think, oh, well, you know, decodable readers, they're not as engaging. But our kids, they love these because they can read, and that gives them the confidence that they can do anything and tackle anything because it allows them success as a reader. So some things that I would like for us to talk about in when we're, you know, having things that come home to us or looking for in the classroom, green flags. Are your children learning the sounds first? Are they hearing it? Are they saying it? We have a curriculum that teaches phonemic awareness and phonics every single day in a systematic, explicit way. And we have student practice, as with the decodable readers. And then we read and we write, we read and rewrite. Just multiple opportunities to learn this. Some things that might cause me some caution, some red flags to step back would be lessons or materials or books that are encouraging our kids to guess. Look at the picture and just make up words. Look at the first letter. What do you think it is? They need to know that every letter has a sound and then move through the word. Or overemphasizing, memorizing words. Having list 100 words to memorize every night and then come back and then checked off. Those are just some things that I would think about in the classroom when I go into our classrooms. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Robin and let her tell you all about the great things with our Tennessee Decodable. Dr. Robin?
So Carissa's just talked about reading is not guesswork. So we're going to talk about a great resource Tennessee has put into the hands of families. Because we know that if children are able to practice the code at home and apply their learning, that will just strengthen and really create a stronger foundation for the children. So in the decodables, we have over 50,000 families now who have requested the decodables, which is really exciting that they'll have this great resource in their homes. But what my analogy is if I have a set of weights and they're just sitting on the shelf, they're not doing anything to help me become healthier. So we want the families to be able to easily access the decodables and know exactly how to use them with their children. There's no judgment, because I certainly would not have known as a parent of a young child what to do with this reader that just came home. So in the front of the decodables, you will see different spots for tips as families work through these with their children. First, you'll see the sounds that they're supposed to be looking for. So in this decodable, when you see the EE, you will look every time that you see it in bold, you will point out to your child that it makes the long E sound, as in sheep. So you don't have to stop the reading, but you just know that when they approach that 2-letter combination, it will say E, and then AE as in cake. Next, you will see practice words. So the practice words are just 2 words that are not decodable, and they're words that just by sight, when the child comes across that, they'll know that the first word is was and the second word is said. And those are just the 2 practice words throughout the whole decodable that the child will be looking for. And then finally, fluency, which is the rate of an appropriate speed, which is like speaking. That's the goal. We don't want children to be able to have a race in reading. We just want them to be able to read at a rate so that their stumbling over words isn't interfering with understanding the story. And then inflection is fun when you have children who want to be dramatic, or Robin, who likes to be dramatic. Inflection is just bringing expression into what you're reading and bringing the story to life. So that as they become stronger readers, that also is a natural part of the process. So when you look at a decodable page, you'll see that bolded words are highlighting those sounds that your child should be practicing. So we talked about when they see the EE together, your child will learn that says E. So every time you will see that letter combination, it will be in bold. And then also there's some reading tips on some of the pages. So it says, for our families, say the word sheep. Do you hear the long E sound? E in the middle. So the parent tip is right there. So we don't have to guess about teaching children how to read. All we have to do is just follow the decodable, know that the children will be able to apply what they know about breaking the code into this great story. Now we're going to turn it over to Dr. Yvette Stewart, who is a district leader in the work and championing her teachers to be able to really work with their children to build readers.
Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to be in this conversation with you about literacy. I am Yvette Stewart, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Director of Elementary Teaching and Learning in Hamilton County Schools. I consider myself a lifelong educator. I've spent 25 years in various roles in education, and the one I'm most proud of is starting my career as a kindergarten and a first grade teacher. I've also served as a school building leader in elementary and middle school, and I did state work with the North Carolina Department of Education before moving to Tennessee. And I believe I moved here at the perfect time because I've been fortunate enough to have watched and been a part of the growing advocacy and the focus on literacy with our early readers, with great organizations in Tennessee like the Department of Education and Robin, who is truly a woman after my own heart. And my fellow colleagues in districts across the state like Scott and Carissa, and the partners in this work, such as the TNIDA, to together help our children flourish and grow into proficient readers, writers, thinkers, and speakers. So I'm going to talk to you with you about the second essential, and that's the knowledge that kids need to build to understand what they read. In our world, we say that this is building worldly knowledge for students, and that simply means that we empower students as young readers by building their vocabulary, exposing them to rich information about the world through literature, and all of this will ultimately improve their ability to comprehend and consume information as a reader. There's research that supports this practice in classrooms. One in particular is a study that had students read a text about a baseball game. And the study revealed that students who were excellent readers, but lacked the background knowledge about baseball, was not as successful as students who were not as skilled as readers, but they had that baseball knowledge. So reading ability in this study contributed less to comprehension success than the students' level of knowledge about baseball. So all of that to say, knowledge of the topic has a bigger and greater impact on comprehension than generalized reading ability does. So here's what you would expect to see and hear from students in classrooms that build background knowledge with students. The example you see here on the screen is in 2nd grade, and students are immersed in a variety of rich texts that help them learn about a particular topic. So in this case, students are learning about seeds, plants, and pollination. And it's very common to have science and social studies concepts and standards through literacy in those classrooms. So students learn that vocabulary, they learn about text features like how to read captions and headers and the structure of informational text when they read them, and they engage in conversations about the topic, repeated over a period of time so it will actually stick. So parents, be assured that they're going to know more than you about these topics. They're going to come home and talk to you, and you're going to say, what? Oh, I didn't know that. You're going to have to do some Googling perhaps to get up to speed with your child. But it is building their confidence and strengthening their ability to read, think, and write about that topic. The questions and conversations you're going to hear teachers having with students gets them engaged and thinking, and it draws them into the text to get that information. So you'll hear teachers asking questions like, how long does the hard fruit protect the seeds? Which is a question on the slide here. And that would spark exploration of where they can find the answer within that text that they're reading, and they would be engaged in activities that connect to that text. So in one of the lessons here, teachers may have kids draw and fill in a timeline to show how long fruit will protect its seeds. This allows the learning to take root, and it also shows the teacher who understands and who may be struggling with the lessons and need additional practice or support. Writing is another skill reinforced in classrooms that build that worldly knowledge. Whatever they read about, they write about it. If they can write about it, then they are internalizing it. When kids read about pollinators, they write about pollinators. If students are reading about Romans, then they're writing about Romans. You could also expect to see kids giving presentations on a topic at the end of a unit. So they both write and then they present their learnings to their classmates. So speaking and writing are things that you can supplement at home. In addition to asking probing questions to your child about what they or what you've read to them, asking them to write about what they understand about the text that they read also helps your child's reading confidence. So reading back to you what they wrote will reinforce their understanding and their knowledge. In the lower grades, you will see a teacher reading to the class quite a bit, because while they're beginning to learn to read, they do most of their learning by listening. And Scott mentioned this earlier in the presentation. Teachers are modeling those good reading strategies when they're doing those read alouds. They are helping the students digest that text and activating their learning auditorily until they can read the words on the page independently and understand what they're reading. They should be able to retell what they heard or what they understood from the text if they are comprehending what's being read. Even in later grades, kids still learn by listening. So read alouds do continue. So even though in middle school or even in high school, that read aloud still happen, but they start to shift the type of oral reading that students will engage in. Students at that age can certainly read on their own, and they just may benefit from group reading or peer reading to still lift the power of listening to text being read. So the last point about building knowledge and growing readers, the texts students read are all appropriate for that particular grade level. So in this picture, those students have text in front of them that keeps the challenge level high for everyone. And the teacher will then provide the necessary support for students who are not reading on grade level at that moment, or students who may be reading above and beyond grade level. So remember the baseball study I mentioned in the beginning, that even if your child can fluently read the words and the text, the repeated exposure to that particular topic with lots of rich information will continue to build their background knowledge and further increase their comprehension as well. You'll also find that these topics will build on from year to year with your children. So depending on the curriculum that your district uses, the topics may vary, but an example of the build would be that second grade, students may learn about those seeds and pollination. And in fourth grade, they learn all about animal defense mechanisms and how the previous learning connects to their future learning. So that's just a little window in insight into classrooms. And I'll pass it on to Scott to talk more about the exposure to those grade level texts.
Thank you, Yvette. And I think it's, as you've seen, what I love that Carissa and Yvette did is they tied together how knowledge building and foundational literacy connects together to help kids learn to read. But what is really amazing is that it not only happens with the combination of those two items, but it also happens across the school year. You'll see learning build across the grades, and you'll see learning build as kids move up. Like all of these curricula tie together so that when a kid enters high school, they've got quite a body of knowledge. They're prepared for high school because they've read so much about history and so much about science, and it's really quite beautiful. You can see on the slide here that a first grader in August in a knowledge building curriculum is writing a full sentence. In years past, we did not see a whole lot of writing taking place because we were practicing reading so much that we didn't really work as Yvette mentioned. When you're seeing reading instruction taking place at its highest form, you're not only going to see reading, but you're going to see thinking and writing and speaking and producing. Like kids are going to use their ability to read to produce knowledge. That's really higher level thinking. You're going to see that a lot. And you can see from August to January how much better this child is able to write. You start to see the growth of their ability to expand their thoughts, to use more vocabulary words that they've learned. It's an amazing process, and you should be able to see that knowledge building taking place across grades. Another key part, other than what we've shared about what you see at school, and I think it's an equally important pairing, is the perfect pair of families and schools. I think, earlier I mentioned that I know parents who have had to go through the process of having a child that was struggling to read diagnosed and to receive help and assistance. It's been a huge struggle. I know there have been a lot of frustrations for parents. There are a lot of frustrations for teachers. There's nothing worse than being a teacher and knowing that you have a child that's struggling to read and not have the tools and resources and materials to be able to help that child. The good news is across Tennessee districts, we are putting those tools in the hands of our school systems. They are working on, this is our second year of implementation of new knowledge building and foundational skill curricula. And this will be the first year with a large number of Tennessee teachers trained on foundational skills. So it's really an exciting time to have a child in Tennessee. We're really excited for the gains that we're going to see made. But the perfect pairing are families and schools working together. When we can do that, when we can put our heads together and work hard together, the impact that we can have on the lives of our kids and their ability to read is going to be exponential. It's going to be amazing. So just a few things that we can work with: read aloud, read to, read with. Students that read 15 minutes or more per day make huge gains in reading. Encourage them to sound out words rather than guess or skip. One of the toughest things as a parent, it's tough as a teacher, is to allow kids to do what we call productive struggle. Don't give them the answer ahead of time. Let them work at it. Let them practice their decoding skills. Let them practice the things that they're learning in the classroom. If it becomes a point of frustration, help them out. Give them a little nudge. Help them out, but let them do the heavy lifting. As Robin mentioned her weights earlier, when our kids are doing that heavy lifting, they will grow so fast. Ask questions. You don't have to be the expert. I remember when my younger daughter is about to go to be an architectural engineer. She passed me in math ability somewhere around 8th grade. But what I learned was I could just ask questions. Quite often she knew the answer. I just needed to prompt her with a question, and then her learning would just take off. Ask your children what they're learning about, and ask questions and have them ask questions as if they are the teacher. Learn together. I mentioned this earlier. Pick a topic that you're interested in and work on it together. And I think we're all guilty of excessive screen time. We probably shortened the lifespan of our eyes by 10 years over the last year, being locked up inside our homes. But when it is screen time, choose TV programs for your child about science or history. That's where those conversations about what they're learning are huge. Find out what they're interested in and make those connections. Kids are interested in a wide variety of things, and identifying those interests and connecting them up is really powerful. So what should you see at school? Books on science and history need to take place in elementary school. For about 30 years, American education across the country in many places had bought into a theory that kids had to learn to read before they could read to learn. And research now shows that that's a terrible way to approach learning. We give up 3 to 5 years of kids learning deeply about science and history. You should see science and history topics from the very first day your child walks into school. That's the commitment that we need to have, because kids are natural scientists. Kids are deeply interested in history. They want to know these things. Find writing connected to those topics, and they should be doing writing connected to those topics. As Yvette mentioned, you should hear about read alouds that the teacher's doing, and providing access, and I can't emphasize this enough, access to on-grade level books that encourages students to use applicable. They may need some accommodations, but they need to be on grade level. Otherwise, what happens is the other kids are on grade level or higher, and kids that are allowed to stay on grade level, books below their grade level, they just fall farther and farther behind, and the frustration level grows because they know that they're behind. It's essential for kids to have accommodations, to have support, to have scaffolding, but to be on appropriate grade level. If your student spends too much time reading books below their grade level, then that's absolutely a red flag that needs to be addressed. How do you support a struggling reader? I would encourage you that the first step is to reach out to your child's teacher, guidance counselor, or principal. I can promise you, I work with 2,300 teachers, and overwhelmingly, I don't know of a single teacher that doesn't want to help a child learn to read. I would ask, what's going on? Where is my child struggling? Are they struggling decoding words? Do they need help to read fluently? Ask your child in school. There's someone at that school that can give you the tools and resources and access to what you need to be able to help your child at home and to identify what the problem is, where the struggle is. And then ask to make sure that your child is working with grade level text. Those are all very fair questions. And then, how should my child's school support my struggling reader? One of the biggest things, and the reality is up until a few years ago, it was really hard. There were some school districts that did this really well, and a lot of school districts didn't have the resources. Now, all of our school districts have these resources, and at the end of this year, the state is going to provide us with a reading screener that's going to even allow us to take it to an even deeper level to assess children's skill gaps. But every school district in Tennessee has the ability to identify a child's skill gaps. And then ask your school to assign your child to a small group for extra practice with those skills, while still ensuring that they're working on grade level work with the rest of the class. There's a big difference between regular Tier 1 instruction and intervention. Their regular classroom instruction needs to be on grade level. Their intervention needs to be in a way that they can practice and work on the skills that they need to be successful in the classroom. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Robin, who's our expert on Ready 4K text and all the great resources from the Department of Education.
So one thing I love about the Reading 360 work the state is doing, and all the different supports that we can give to the world around building Tennessee readers, is that there is an important connection for families and communities. And I think it's for the first time that we've really gotten the whole picture right of all the different pieces of the puzzle that need to be in place. So some of the family resources, this journey of the last 5 family literacy nights has been a great resource just to pull our Tennessee family together and get everyone on the same page. But we also have some other resources in place. So first, there are Ready for K texts. And so I subscribe to these. My daughter's 14, but I wanted to see what parents would receive. So just with a simple connection with your school district, you can get a subscription to the Ready for K for free. And they send you text messages of little facts or tips or things you can do when you're walking down the aisle of the grocery store, or just interactions that you'd have that would build language and sometimes even build affective skills and just help your children grow through things that don't take resources or money. Then additionally, the wonderful decodables that you've been hearing all about, that we're trying to get into our families' hands, and we'll get into our families' hands, and then the ways that we're trying to support families' access to those texts and how they use them with their children. And then over the past year and a half of COVID, our Tennessee Department of Education leadership came up with a connection with PBS. And so they created some videos where children could get foundational skills instruction through videos and through a partnership with PBS. So I know Scott Langford talks about in his region near Sumner County, you know, whatever their local PBS station is, families can tune in and get lessons that are designed to support Tennessee kids in different curricular areas. Then also we have a website called Best for All Central, and it's a big hub of all kinds of resources for teachers, families, students. And one piece of this is called a STEAM hub. And so Dr. Stewart and Dr. Langford have talked a lot about building background knowledge. So this is a great resource for when children have an interest in a particular topic that they've learned about, like pollinators. They could go into the STEAM hub and you know, look around for resources and find ways to expand their knowledge. I think something that has really resonated throughout our time over the last summer working with families and listening, and of course the work of the organization that's hosting our event tonight is, you know, families need resources when their kids are struggling. And so absolutely the school is the greatest partner, but there are also some resources that this organization provided, actually gave us some tips on where we could you know, give some options for parents to dig in a little bit when their child might be struggling. So here are some great resources, and these will be, we'll make sure that you have access to these throughout the chat, but great resources where parents can go and get more information. And then, you know, one message that we want to make sure our families know and understand is if your child is struggling and if your child seems frustrated, then there is something that can be done, it needs to be done. So often, you know, we want our children to be accessing grade level text, and we want all children to have the same opportunity and the same access. But we also have to realize that sometimes when we put these great texts in front of children, they have to have some supports. So we want them to have equal opportunity, but then we have to come in with the net and support our students so that we can build them up to be able to have full access and be reading on grade level. There are lots of different kinds of, you know, tools and accommodations that we can use to be able to lift up our children and scaffold them onto the next level. So lots of great resources, and just know that if your child, if your child seems frustrated or if your child seems that they are struggling, then definitely we'll reach out and we need to work together to make that better as a family, community, district, state partnership.
All right, and I think it's time. I want to thank our panelists. We have such a great group. It's great to hear from Carissa and Yvette and Robin, of course. It's great to share this body of knowledge. It's also great to hear questions. So we would love to hear any questions that you might have tonight.
I have a question.
Okay.
Are they, and I appreciate that the materials and so forth are getting to our teachers in the schools. Are our educational institutes like the college, the teacher training colleges, are they like, is that what new elementary school teachers are getting right from the beginning, or are they still coming out behind and needing to be caught up on having these methods and tools to help the kids?
Robin, do you want to talk about the state perspective, and then I can talk a little bit about Yvette, and I can probably talk a little bit about the district perspective.
Sure. Yes, great question. Definitely, that's another part of the umbrella of Reading 360 is that connection with our higher ed institutions. And so there's a couple of things happening. One is that we're partnering to, you know, execute the implementation of these new literacy standards in our EPP programs. And then another thing that is we have 115 post-secondary professors who are going to be taking this course this summer in teaching foundational skills. So it's just like it's taken us a while to get the boat on the river, like Director Hassel talked about, everybody rowing, moving forward. There's definitely a relationship sparked. Everybody's moving forward, and we've just got to be able to know that our ship is now headed in the correct direction, and now we're just going to start moving. But absolutely, everyone is at the table ready to go. Great question.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think from a district perspective, it's a little bit of a both and. I've been, you know, I would say probably 3 or 4 years ago, we were seeing exactly what you were saying. A lot of new teachers coming in with very little foundational skills training. It's already started changing, and as as Robin mentioned, 115 professors signed up already. I see a real hunger. I talked with a university today that wanted to meet with us to talk about what they could do to better meet our needs as a district. We do a lot of extensive training when new teachers come in, and all teachers, because this is kind of new for everybody. We've just finished a 2-day training with our teachers on how to use our decodable readers. And then we're persistently going back. We've expanded our foundational through 3rd grade. And so we trained all of our 3rd grade teachers on it this year. We're looking to push that up into 4th, 5th, and 6th grade because we've got so many kids that have missed foundational literacy, and they need it on up even into middle school. So I think you're going to really see kind of a both and partnership. I love the moves that the state has led for universities to take. And I think districts are moving maybe a little bit ahead of the colleges because we have the curricula in place and have to train our teachers on it. But it's really a dynamic partnership. And Yvette, Chrissy, y'all may want to add there too.
Yeah, I just echo what you're saying. In Hamilton County, we have a consortium with the local universities. And so we partner all the time and talk and have conversations about building each other's knowledge and what incoming teachers will need. We're hosting trainings this week with teachers, and we've invited and we have our university partners in those trainings with us. So they're always trying to refine and refresh their courses that they're offering to those teachers. And as Scott said, our onboarding process for teachers is also something that we really put a lot of effort into to make sure that those teachers are ready to go day one.
Thank you
Chrissy,
again.
yeah.
I think it's
I'm
great
sorry.
that it's also, I'm sorry, that it's in the middle schools. And so then when I happen to be a high school teacher, when they get to us, they hopefully won't have that 2nd grade reading level anymore, and that it can still, so do they, because I understand that the push is before 3rd grade and not that they can't learn, but is there, I guess there must be research out there, hopefully that it is still going to be effective in the middle grades. Is that a fair question?
Yeah, I think what you see, I think it's a nuanced argument. A kid that isn't able to read proficiently by 3rd grade, by the time they get to 7th, 8th grade or high school, they have so many holes that it's a different process to try to help them than it is when they're younger. But I can say, like I can't speak for every district, but in Sumner County, we've put in place a reading intervention system that uses the same resources, that's research-based, that sounds first, from kindergarten through 12th grade, so that those kids that are rolling in with significant reading deficiencies, we can pinpoint those and address them. One of the things that I think is really helpful, the state sound, and there are people much more knowledgeable on this call than me. So Robin, y'all jump in if I mess this up. But what I like about what the state has rolled out with their Sounds First curriculum is it can also function in upper grades, I think, as a toolkit. When you identify holes in kids' reading, in what they need, we can pull those tools out of the curriculum to help those kids that are a little bit older than what the curriculum's aimed at, to kind of fill those gaps and help support them.
Scott, the thing I would add is just that this is absolutely what needs to happen in our next steps, and the state's working to think about the middle school and the high schoolers who have this gap in understanding of the code. So, Scott, obviously in his district, it's already a problem of practice that they're looking at. And I also think, we have some 3rd through 8th grade teachers who have been attending these summer trainings, and they are making connections. They're saying, we need to know about this instruction because we do have children in our grade levels who are not able to access text. So it's on the horizon, and we're building, and we're going to build that field of dreams because our kids deserve it. But definitely that's an area of focus for our state.
That's awesome. Thank you again.
I would
Yes,
like to
ma'am.
go back just real quick to what Robin and Scott were saying. I did have 5th grade teachers in my training, and it was aha to them. They came back at least knowing what to do for students that were struggling reading. That gave them, just some knowledge to help those struggling readers. So yes, it is coming.
All right. So our next question, Julie asked, my daughter is 7 and starting 1st grade. She's displaying a lot of red flags in her reading and writing, and I suspect dyslexia or some similar learning disability. But when I approach the school system for help, they're resistant to getting her tested. Where do I need to go to get her help? Chris, Yvette, would y'all like to jump in?
You know, Dr. Langford, the whole chief of the academics division at the Tennessee Department of Ed, you know what she just told that parent? Here's my email me, and we're going to get this figured out. We're going to get an answer, and we're going to help you get the leverage you need to get this figured out. So
there we go.
He has
That's
a good
great
connection right there.
Yeah, and I will add this. Like I think what we're doing in my district, it's a nuanced approach in kindergarten and first grade, especially in the era of COVID, because all kids have suffered to some extent, and there are gaps in the learning of almost every child just because of what we've been through the last 18 months. I know, like, we're trying to shift to give plenty of time for our teachers to have time to work with the kids in the classroom and through our interventions, just to see if we can get them back caught up. So it is a little bit of a nuanced thing, because we want to make sure, because sometimes what a child is experiencing, every child is experiencing, and it's not that your child is, and I'm not speaking about your specific situation. I'm just saying in general, we have a lot of kids that are in different places just because of the disruptions that have taken place due to COVID. And it's going to take, I've been preaching to my teachers and parents that we have to be gracious, because our kids have been through a lot, and it's going to take a little while to get us back up on our feet. But I would definitely contact Dr. Coons, because she is the expert of all experts on this call about these questions, and she'll be a great resource to help. And then we have Cindy asked a question. I'm a parent of a high school student that I knew was dyslexic in kindergarten, but it took until third grade to get her an intervention. I'm thrilled about this project, but will we still have tier issues for intervention to accompany this approach for all kids? Anyone on our panel like to jump in there?
I think as a past teacher and principal and district leader, I would say now more than ever before, we have a screener, a universal screener that's going to be provided to Tennessee districts free of charge. And that screener can help you dive in finally to really see which components of phonemic awareness and all this foundational skills picture that the child is missing. So no longer can we say, well, they're not switching this. Somebody, I think Jennifer said this in the beginning, it looks like they're switching their B's and D's. And if a parent said that, I would just say, that's not necessarily the sign. Now we know so much more about how to serve children with characteristics of dyslexia or with dyslexia. Now we have a tool that can say, drill in like a surgeon and say, I'm not a general practitioner that's generally going to tell you your child is struggling. I'm going to dive in and tell you exactly where your child needs support. That's a very different picture than years ago when I taught. So now we can tailor intervention to the child and move forward. And that's what teachers are working so hard to dive in on this summer, is using these assessments to make strategic decisions instead of a global address to children who can't read or who are struggling with reading. Great question. And just so you know, we're all advocating, and that's where we want to be, is getting children the supports they need as early as we can.
Yeah, and just connected to that, sorry, Carissa, we have so many more resources available to teachers and schools now that we had before. We have really stronger diagnostic assessment tools. We have the curriculum. I mean, we're getting teachers trained. Building leaders are joining this effort, and certainly moving the needle and leading their buildings in a way that will improve this and will close those gaps. So I'm just excited about having more knowledge and knowing better and doing better now that we have these tools and resources, and the collective understanding that we have some work to do, and that there are things that we can do and approaches that we can take to help students that have those gaps, so we can close them, and so they're become better readers in the future.
And absolutely, just using multiple pieces of data. Not just using one, but using multiple pieces, so we can figure out what is the problem, and using our assessments to drive our instruction, and immediately on the spot trying to hit those skill gap deficits daily.
And I would argue, like, I think what I see a lot of schools doing now is moving beyond just the 3 tiers we currently have, and looking for those kids that aren't in tier 2 or tier 3 interventions, and saying, what can we do? Those kids that are struggling, but they're not in a tiered intervention, what can we do to help them? You know, the state is rolling out a lot of support for tutoring. And I think in high school, that's going to be a way to get a lot of help for kids that aren't in one of the tiered interventions, but need some extra support. And I mean, I see that happening a lot right now. All right, do we have any? I've got 7 o'clock, I think, or excuse me, 8 o'clock. I think our time is just about up. Anybody have a last question? Cindy has another. What ideas do you have to engage kids in reading that have already had a bad experience with reading and are now in high school and choose not to read for pleasure? My child will only read out of necessity. This alarms me as she moves not only to college, but also in the enjoyment of reading throughout life. And I think Dr. Coombs hit that head on. Audiobooks are huge. You know, we have a principal in our district that is dyslexic, and when he was in 4th grade, was moved into resource classes, graduated high school in resource, happened to be an exceptional basketball player, and when he was in college, got help for his reading disability for the first time. And he will, it's an amazing story because he will earn his doctorate in December of 2022. Just an amazing story. But you know, when we were all talking about all the leadership books we were reading, he talked about what a struggle it was for him to do that. And then he's picked up audiobooks, and that's really been a huge gift for him. And I think it's a great way to identify some topics of interest and then tap into those audiobooks, and that'll help them. And then over time, they'll get back into the actual books. But that's a great suggestion from Dr. Coons. I think that, and then just trying to find anything that they're interested in, regardless of whether it's interesting to us or not. If it's interesting to them, encouraging them to read it. I mean, you know, when I struggled, I was a football player, and I read like every book about football players known to man, and my parents just kept buying them for me because I was interested in it. All right, I'm gonna advance the next slide. And I just want to take, before I do, because I'm going to be turning it back over to Jennifer, I just want to take a moment and thank y'all so much for joining us tonight. It's such an important topic. Reading truly is, in my mind, the most important thing that we can do is teaching kids to read well. And I'm so appreciative of organizations like the International Dyslexia Association for the work that they do, but just for you parents, because I know it's been, especially for those of you that have older children, I know what a struggle it's been to get your children the assistance that they needed. And I'm so thankful for the state and the resources that they're providing us to be able to move forward and truly help all of our kids, and for all to mean all. So Jennifer, thank you so much for hosting us tonight. It's been an honor and a joy to work together.
Well, thank you. I definitely want to say thanks to the master teachers tonight and the Department of Education for their partnership and for continuing to support teachers to teach our kids effectively. Also, there is a short survey that you'll be receiving. If you will just take that short survey and kind of let us know how things went. If there's more information you'd like to know about, definitely let us know. Also, let's go to the next slide. Keep in touch with us. If you want to know more about dyslexia or how we can help you learn more about it, sign up for our newsletter. In the chat box, there is a link you can go to. Follow us on Twitter at TN Dyslexia. And of course, there's always Facebook. Just follow the Tennessee branch of the International Dyslexia Association, and we'll be glad to help you in any way we can. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.